All right, so just briefly on what we're going to cover today. We've pulled out just sort of some snippets, or should I say, just a couple of areas that we've identified that probably are most relevant for the greater audience. So the areas we're going to cover in today is some functionality around some new functionality that's been added around SmartList Designer and SmartList. The ability to copy and paste from Excel into some GL journals. We'll demonstrate the purchase requisitions functionality, and we'll use the web client to demonstrate that, and then we'll also demonstrate the workflow capability, and then we'll top it off. We'll close it off with the emailing functionality of documents and attachments. And the very last piece is the reporting piece, is the Business Analyzer app, which some of you may already be using versions of, and I'll show you the new Windows version of that app. All right, well, without further ado, I'm going to switch over to GP 2015. And the first thing I've got to do, of course, is log in. Right, so first and foremost, you may note that the homepage here hasn't really changed all that much from previous versions, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I'm just going to dive straight into some of the system areas that have changed, which are probably fairly relevant to most users out there. And the first area I want to go into is the user setup area. And when creating a user, for those people out there who are currently doing this within their organization, one of the areas that they've added to now, we've always been able to copy user security settings, but one of the areas that we weren't able to do in the past is copy settings such as homepage roles, homepage content, and area pages. So if a user had already, say for example, modified the homepage for a particular role in the organization, so let's say for argument's sake we had an accounts payable employee or staff member who had configured or customized their homepage with certain functions, reminders, charts, graphs, and so forth, and links and shortcuts. Those things can now be copied from that user role or user to a new user, where in the past all we could do is just copy the security. Now they've extended that, so not only can we copy the security, we can now copy these other features from one user to another. So I think that that's quite a handy little feature to have. A couple of other things around system and system admin is the ability to take a company offline now. So if you're doing any sort of month-end administration, copying companies, backing up companies and things like that, it can actually be done within GP now. There's no longer a need to be a system or a database administrator. In the past, you would have to be a database administrator to take a company offline or make it not accessible to any users if you wanted to lock it down whilst you're doing any administration work. Whereas now you can come into this area here within Dynamics GP, select your company you want to take offline, insert that, take that offline, and at the same time I can now post a message to any user who then tries to log on to that company by coming in here. And there's my default message, but I'm going to switch that and say I want to put in a custom message and say, you know, company currently offline for month end and will be back at 2:30 p.m. or something like that, yeah. And away you go, and then that basically will take that company offline, and any user who tries to log onto that company will see this message appear when they try to do so, which is quite good. I think it's quite handy, especially letting them know when it will be back online and so forth. So that's one extra little piece. Another little piece in the system area is the ability to send a message to users. If you don't want to use the blast all email around the organization, we can now use the send message feature within Dynamics GP. And why this is a bit nicer than the email is that you can see here we can identify which users are logged into which companies, and then you can see down the bottom here I can say, hey, send a notification message, or also send a task with a reminder, so therefore they have a reminder. So I can basically use this as a sort of a forward reminder of when I'm going to be taking the company offline and things like that, yeah. So I'm just not going to do that. I'm going to come out of here. And so that sort of covers some of the functionality they've added around that system area. Now one of the areas we said we're going to talk about is the smart list area. So I imagine that, well, hopefully most of you people out there in current user land should be aware of the smart list feature and some of the work that Microsoft has done in the smart list area, where they've made some changes, they've made some major inroads here and made some nice changes to the look and feel of the smart list area. So I've gone into smart list now, and you can see here that the list of I have all my smart lists on the left here, and all the functionality there is pretty stock standard. So I can come in here and yes, do a list of customers and search and filter and so forth. But one of the things they've added is obviously the ability with Smart List Designer in the latest release. So in 2013 R2 version, they started introducing the Smart List Designer, which is the ability to build the smart list yourself. In the past, prior to 2013 R2, you would have needed a third-party add-on product to do this, whereas now this is native to Smart List, so the ability to build new smart lists, and that's what you can see up the top left-hand corner here, the ability to say, I want to build a new smart list. And then the other one I want to point out today is not only can we build new smart lists, and in 2015 what they've done is they've also added the ability, so if I select, say, my purchase requisition smart list here, where it's just a list of requisitions within the system, you can see this smart list here, I have the ability to publish. So what that does, when I click on the Publish button, it actually pushes this out in an Excel report format. So yeah, I can say, yeah, replace that existing one. There it is, it's published. So all that means is now I have a repository here of Excel reports, and in my instance, my repository happens to sit just in a network share, but this could be sitting somewhere in Office, on an Office 365 environment or a SharePoint intranet, whichever the case. But I can come in here now, go into my purchasing folder, and you can see here, there's my purchase requisitions smart list, which I've now published. And then when I open this Excel spreadsheet, to the end user who is opening up that spreadsheet, you know, it appears as just an Excel spreadsheet, but in fact what that's actually doing is it's retrieving that information directly from Microsoft Dynamics GP. So this information is refreshed every time that the spreadsheet is open. And even whilst the spreadsheet's open, I can just right-click anywhere within the data set here, and you see I have the refresh option. And basically by doing that, I'm instructing that spreadsheet to go and extract that data again in case the data has changed. So rather than use the old Smart List feature, if I just go back into my Smart List here, I could use the feature here of exporting that to Excel, but of course that's a static report which is generated. So yeah, I can push this information out into Excel, but it's static. It's not going to be refreshed, it's not going to be updated. Whereas by doing the publish option, it means that the user who's opening up that Excel spreadsheet is getting a fresh view of the data every time and has the option of refreshing it as well. So that pretty much covers the first bullet point on their list here. So using Smart List Designer to publish Excel reports. What I'm going to go into now is into some of the functionality that's been added in the GL journal area, and that is the ability to paste into journals. So let's have a look at what that means. So I'm going to close this Excel spreadsheet down so we don't get confused. So I have another Excel spreadsheet set aside here called Electricity Journal, and I've got a shortcut to it from my GP homepage. So here I am, I've got a Excel spreadsheet which I've designed, particularly, say for example, and I've called this one electricity accrual, as you can see here, but I've designed it so just to demonstrate today how I can copy this now just using the simple copy feature. So all I've done there is just say copy, or right click and say copy. So I've copied that particular area of my spreadsheet, and you can see all I've got here is a column showing reference, one with the account number, and then a debit and credit columns. So once I've copied that, I can switch back over to GP, open up my GL journal entry screen, and once I'm in my GL journal entry screen, all I need to do is put my cursor down here at my line entry point. Then I just hit the paste button at the top of that screen, and you should see there that it pastes in all the information that was in that journal. And if I just make this screen a little bit bigger, and if I just expand the rows there, you'll see here that it not only does it paste in the account, the amount, but also any reference or any narrative I want to add from the Excel spreadsheet in there. So all the I know everyone's muted, but I'm pretty sure all the accountants out there are probably applauding and having doing some backflips and so forth and throwing a party based on that one. All right. So that's the Excel copy and paste functionality. I won't save that. Right. Go back to our little thing. Now the next piece of the presentation, I'm going to demonstrate in the one foul swoop. I want to sort of demonstrate the next 3 bullet points here, and that is I'm going to show, using the web client, I'm going to show the purchase requisitions functionality and the built-in workflow. Okay, so first and foremost, for the people who are not aware, is requisitions prior to 2015 or 2013 R2, requisitions were based or built within the business portal feature of Dynamics GP. That's now been deprecated, so that feature, the whole business portal, has been deprecated, so it's no longer available. So especially in 2015, the purchase requisitions functionality has now been moved into Dynamics GP itself. So if you want to access the requisitions, yeah, you can still do it via the web. It just means that we're using the web client. So here I am. You can see here I've just switched now. So rather than using my desktop version, I've now logged into Dynamics GP 2015 via Internet Explorer. So here I have just an Internet Explorer tab open, and I've logged into the client, and for all intensive purposes, you notice this exactly the home page looks no different than if I was logged on to the client. So here I'm logging on to Dynamics GP from Internet Explorer from anywhere in the world. That I don't have to have it installed. I could be in an internet cafe on the other end of the planet, and I've logged on to Dynamics GP. So I'm going to enter a purchase requisition using the web client, and on my home page here you'll notice I've logged on as GP user here as opposed to Robert. And GP user has a slightly different home page where, for example, I have the procurement piece here. So I'm going to use this to navigate. I'm going to say, yeah, I want to enter a purchase requisition. When I click on that, it'll open up my enter purchase requisition screen. Come on, here we go. Okay, so there's my purchase requisition entry screen. So I'm going to enter a new purchase requisition, give it a description. I'm going to purchase today, I'm going to purchase a brand new motor vehicle, is my favorite. Brand new motor vehicle. I can add my common ID, I can stipulate a ship to address. I'm not going to bother with any of that at this stage. And all I'm going to do is come straight down to the item number here and just put in motor vehicle. Yeah, one each of those, and it's going to be a $50,000 motor vehicle, and it's going to be a brand new HSV motor. Oops. No, actually, let's be more specific. Club Sport. Cool. Yes, for all you out there, I'm a HSV fan. So there we go. So because it's a requisition, you'll notice here that I can enter a creditor ID on a line-by-line item basis, so I can be purchasing or raising a requisition for line items that potentially this one requisition may actually generate multiple purchase orders. I'm just going to keep it simple today and just have the one line item, but I'm not going to stipulate a creditor ID because the creditor ID may potentially be ultimately stipulated by my purchasing officer in my organisation. But by all means, if I did have the creditor ID or I didn't know who I was going to purchase from, I could add that here as well as the site ID. If I wanted to, I could also click on the attach button here and attach a copy of, say, for example, a quote that I may have that I may have seeked from the supplier in beforehand. And we'll talk more about this attach functionality in the next section where I talk about attachments and sales orders and so forth. But for the purpose of this exercise, I'm now going to hit the submit button, so keep it fairly simple. Hit the submit button so that this requisition makes its way around the workflow that I've configured. Now my workflow is going to be fairly simple. I'm going to say please approve as I need it for the weekend. Cool. Let's hit submit. and off it goes. So now I'll log out of here, close this down, I'll exit GP and log out of that. So I've done my bit and off it goes into into the workflow. So if I come into my email, come into Outlook, I can see a couple of things have happened. I get a email now, being the approver here, I get an email saying, hey, have a look here, Mr. Approver, requisition 15 needs to be approved. So I can click on that hyperlink here with the requisition number, and when I do click on that, you'll notice in the background here, it's actually opened up that requisition so I can view that requisition and what's on that directly from the email that I received, yeah? So I can now view that, I can have a look at what's being requested and so forth and make a decision on that. If I then want to approve that, what I can do is if I come into my email again, here, I can then click on one of these shortcuts here, so the whole hyperlinks I should say, so the approve, reject or delegate one, and approve directly from the email. So once again, if I'm out on the road or remote or not in the office and I want to be able to do this from my phone, from my tablet device, whilst I'm out on the road, I can now click on the approve button, and you'll see here that when I do, simply all it's doing is opening up a little portal in my using just a browser access, and I can now put in a comment here and hit the approve button. So I'll say, sure, sounds like a nice car, and say hit approve. And in effect, what I've done there is I've approved that requisition without even going into the application. So if I switch back now into the application and I open up that requisition, and I'll just go into purchase requisition entry. Let's have a look at what's happened here. So here it is, requisition number 15. We could see that the workflow bar that displays across the page here is now showing as completed. And I'm just going to click on the view history here to have a look at the workflow. Now, of course, I've created some fairly simple workflow to demonstrate the workflow functionality. In other words, the workflow I've set up on this particular requisition entry screen is purely just going to ask the workflow to be approved if it exceeds $1,000, and it just goes to one approver. So here we can see the original step that when the requisition was first created with the comments that were entered, so please approve because I need it for the weekend, and then the approver and the approver's comments. Yep, sounds like a nice car. So we have all that workflow approval history showing to us. Okay, so that's sort of in one action or one bit of functionality there. We've sort of what we're showing you there is the use of the web client to raise a requisition. So with the new GP 2015, there's some new licensing, obviously, to move any users out there who are currently using the business portal to raise requisitions. That's now obviously functionality is now being migrated to within GP, and there's obviously users that have been created within GP. Rather than be a full user, you can be a limited user who can raise requisitions. So speak to your account manager about that if you need to do that. Okay, and yeah, so we've used the web client. We've shown you the requisition, which is the new functionality which has been migrated to within GP, and we've also showed the workflow. Now I've shown you workflow today purely around the purchase requisition entry, but there's a whole host of workflows that are in the system. So there's workflow around purchase orders, workflow around requisitions, which I've shown you, workflow. We actually have workflow in the next release, which is due next month. We have workflow around accounts payable invoices. There's workflow around GL batches. There's already workflow around accounts payable batches, and some are around, say, vendor and vendor approvals. So there's a whole host of workflows, and Microsoft just continues to add to that list of workflows as the product moves forward. So yeah, stay tuned to this space. Okay, I'm going to take a breath and switch back to the PowerPoint slide just to show. Okay, so the next area we're going to go to now is the email in an attachment of documents. Okay, so first and foremost, for the people out there who are currently using, or for the current users who are using, if I just open up, I'm just going to open up a simple debtor or customer screen. And anyone would know out there that the little pieces of paper, wherever you see these little pieces of paper, is the attachment, the old attachment functionality. And I say the old attachment functionality. If I click on it now, you'll see there's the old attachment functionality where I can put in my attachments, and then when I click on the paperclip here, I can actually attach documents. Now if I click on it, because I've activated the new attachment functionality, you will notice I can have a slightly different screen. So what Microsoft is doing is it's moving the functionality that was previously behind that paperclip to this new attachment functionality. So if I now use, I'll just discard that. If I go to an inventory item, I'll just come up and open up an inventory item here, and I'll bring up the first inventory item. You can see here across the top, my ribbon strip across the top here, my attachment paperclip here is now showing the paperclip with a good old piece of paper. And for all those users out there who have been using this already will know that a paperclip with a little piece of paper behind it means there is attachments there. So I will click on that, and that will open up for this particular inventory item the list of attachments. And you can see here there's a couple of attachments I have. So I have a JPEG called Green Phone JPEG, which is a picture of the inventory item, and a PDF manual. Yeah. So I can click on these at any time and say preview, and you can see there's a PDF of which is attached to this item. So I can have as many of these as I like. These attachments, when I've created them, there's a bit of setup here that when I attach the attachment to the item, I nominate whether that attachment flows through to the transactions and whether I allow it to be sent out on emails. So what's all that about? Let's have a look. Now that functionality I'm talking about here, this screen, you'll see is the same whether I'm attaching documents to a customer, a supplier, an inventory item, a transaction, etc., etc. Yeah. So I can attach everywhere where there was a paperclip in the past. Basically, this has now been replaced. So okay, let's have a look at how this all works and how it all comes together. So now I'm going to open up my typical sales transaction entry screen, and I come in here and I'm going to generate an invoice straight from the get-go, and I'm going to say it's for good old Aaron Fitz, and I'm going to put it in my patch, and I come down here to the item number, and I'm going to put in that 100 XLG, that item that we were just looking at a minute ago. So I'm going to put this on the invoice here. Yeah, one of those at $59.95. Now, we all know that we can email, hopefully we know that we can email invoices directly out to the customer using the email functionality. That was functionality that was added back in the 2010, and then obviously in 2013 it's been extended, that functionality. So before I do though, what I'm going to do is under my Actions button here, I have a new option that allows me to say select which attachments to include in the email. So I'm going to click on that. So what you can see here, what the system is now doing is identifying that, hey, on line 1 of this invoice, that item has attachments that we can pull through and include. So I'm going to tick those and say, yeah, I want to send those along with the invoice to the client. So I say, okay. Then all I do is I do my normal emailing out of this invoice. Now when I email out and say, yes, once I save it first, say, yep, email the invoice out to the client. So, yep, send it in an email, hit the print button, generate in the email. So in the background, what that's doing is generating an email. I'll just close this screen down. If I go switch over to Outlook, I should see, it might take a little while to generate, but I should see an email come through with, so here I am potentially logged on as a customer. I can see it sitting in my outbox, and I should get it through my inbox in a minute now. There we go. And there I have in my inbox, as the customer now, in my inbox, an email that's come through with the invoice, so in PDF format. So if I just open that up, yes, there it is. That's using the Word template functionality, if you guys aren't aware. So that email has been using the Word template functionality to generate the PDF. So there's the invoice itself. But also alongside of that, we can see here, there's the JPEG, so there's a nice picture of the phone in this case, and also the PDF which I had attached to the item. So we're able to see there that we can generate, using the attachment functionality now, we can pull through and generate emails directly to our clients, pulling through that. So this is, once again, I've used the example of using the sales and sales invoice to pull that through and push it out to the customer in this case. But that functionality can be used in other areas as well. So yes, we can use the purchase order functionality. In the purchase order functionality, we can use this and do use that pull through attachment functionality. And the most pertinent point is that if you are using the current OLE paperclip functionality for attachments, that Microsoft has developed a little utility that will pick up any attachments that you have in place at the moment and migrate it across to this new functionality so that we can use this pull-through attachment functionality. So there we are. So that's if I just switch over, that's the emailing and attachment of documents functionality that we were going to cover on today. So some nice generic functionality that, like I said, goes across the board. Okay. Now the last piece of the puzzle is the next piece I'm going to show you now is just some reporting enhancements. So for any users out there who are currently using the Business Analyzer app, or application I should say, rather than app, because it's slightly different things. What Microsoft has done now for all the people out there using Windows 8 or beyond, 8.1, there is now an app for Business Analyzer. What does all that mean? So if I'm just coming out of here and I've got Windows 8 loaded on my machine, so I'm just going to open up to my application or start area, and there's a whole host of applications out there. So I'm going to open up the Business Analyzer app. Now what the Business Analyzer app is what Microsoft has done with this is basically created a hub for viewing the information that in the past we would have used or viewed using either our home page. So if I just switch back to my home page there for a second, I don't want to jump around too much, but these sort of KPI style graphs and charts that would previously appear on our home page, yeah? So if we want to push these out now to, say, for example, managers, division heads, or whoever it may be in the organization who may not necessarily have access to the Dynamics GP system, but we want them to have access to this information, what we can do is we give them access to the app, and now using a tablet or a touch-enabled device, they can view these those reports and so forth. So if I come in here, and you can just see here, for example, I can come in and say, hey, show me the net income summary view in detail. I can show that as a comparison view. And of course, I'm using the mouse at the moment, but if I was viewing this on my tablet, you can see here it's all touch enabled, and it's designed to be used with big fat fingers like mine. So I can say comparison view. I want to see comparison view to prior year as opposed to budget or as opposed to forecast. If we go back out here, other styles of reports, month-to-date expenses, some of the financial reports, so people who are already using Management Reporter. Management Reporter is, of course, the FRX replacement. So if I open up here the departmental income statement, you can see here that we're able to view and drill down on the income statements using Management Reporter. One of the other areas I want to highlight or touch on is that if we do have multiple roles in an organization, or we have access to multiple organizations or companies within Dynamics, then if I just right click here or pull down from the top if I'm using touch. I can now change my role in the organization and say, hey, I'm now the sales manager role, and of course that will give me a totally different set of charts and views for that organization or that business. As opposed to if I change organization altogether, you can see here I might have access to multiple organizations. So I might say, hey, I now want to have a look at Contoso Consulting in USA, and again, slightly different roles, different company, different roles, and different information being displayed. So that's the Business Analyzer app as opposed to the Business Analyzer application, which was there since 2010. There was an application there so they could do a similar sort of thing, but they've obviously now pushed this out to the touch environment so that it can be accessed using an app on a tablet device and, well, even the Windows 8 environment. Also now available for Android and for iOS, so for Apple devices as well. So you can view that on an iPad or an Android device. Okay, that pretty much, well, that finishes the bits of what's new. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come into hand over to Q&A time. So we'll allow ample time to answer questions out there. So Kim, do you have some questions for me?
We do have some questions, Rob, but just for anyone who's not sure where to put their questions, there's a little box on the right-hand side that says questions. So if you've got any as we're going through the ones that we've got now, please feel free to put them in. So we'll go back to the copying and pasting from Excel into GL journals. Can tax code be copied from the Excel to the GL journal as well?
At this stage, no, the tax code is not supported, so it just purely does the journal. So you'd have to do the journal and then manually add the tax code. So that, unfortunately, the answer is no.
Thank you. Just sticking with the copying and pasting section there, does the copy from Excel to GL journal replace GGL? Now, I'm not sure what GGL means, but I'm sure you do.
Yeah, GGL is the PA-developed journal import tool. Does it replace it? Well, it's purely your choice as to whether you want to replace it or not. But yeah, I suppose it depends on how you're importing your journals, what your journals look like. It could potentially replace it is the answer, but that's totally a call that you'll make yourself as to whether its appropriateness is if it's appropriate, then yeah, it could potentially replace it.
Great. Okay, another one with the staying in the same area. Is there a specific order to enter the data in Excel for the copy and paste function into the GL?
Yes, there is, and it has to be pretty much in that format that I had on that spreadsheet, and that is the first column is the description, I think it's account description, and then the debit and credit columns. So yeah, there is a specific one.
That's something that we could supply if a client requests that of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Our support team is more than happy to help you with that. It's also in the manuals and so forth, but yeah, definitely.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, the next one is around the purchase requisitions. Can one employee have 2 approval managers?
Yes. Now, so that means several things to me. So 2 approval managers. So in other words, you can set up the workflow to say, hey, I have 2 approval managers and it needs to be approved by both, or at least one. Or it could be potentially 2 approval managers. It needs to go be approved by the first one before it is approved by the second one. Or it could be 2 approval managers whereby if it's more than X dollars, then it goes to one manager, or otherwise if it's more than Y dollars, it goes to another manager. So yes, it can be, the workflow can be configured to address all of those scenarios.
Fantastic. That's got a thank you, so that's answered their question. Excellent. The next one was on the document attachment. So can you attach documents that sit outside of GP, e.g. you browse to the local file to grab them? Okay,
very good question. So the document attachments are actually stored, so when you're first attaching the document attachment, using the document attachment feature now, it's actually now storing it within the SQL database that sits in the background behind GP. So GP now is storing those attachments within the database. So initially you point it to the document that you want to attach, and then it pulls it in and then it stores it in alongside the rest of the GP data. The reason for this, of course, is now that we have the web client functionality, anyone who's out there and not necessarily in the office and has office access, or the document may be stored, say, on a network share or something, then they may not have access to that. So therefore, by storing it in the database, then GP has access to it at all times. So therefore, I can then forward it from anywhere whilst I'm using the web client access and so forth. I don't need to be in the office. Hopefully that answers the question.
All right, great, thank you. Look, there's a final one here at the moment, but it's around licensing, so I'm really not sure that you're going to be able to help on that one, Rob, but let's give it a go. Otherwise, I might be able to step in on this one. It says, do we need multiple GP licenses for business portal users? I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, I think what they might be asking is, with the requisition manager, you said earlier that you that they used to use the business portal to access that.
That's correct.
And now in 2015, obviously, with the business portal not being used anymore, is there a different type of license that's required for that? Now,
yes. Yeah, so there is. So let's be generic here, and we'll say that there is. So what Microsoft has realised, that obviously by having to get those users who would previously just log onto the business portal to raise a requisition, Microsoft recognises that user now has to log into GP to raise a requisition. So rather than that user have to consume a full license, there is a cut down license, which of course is a cheaper license to purchase as well, but there is a cut down license. So anyone who's upgrading, the important thing to note though, anyone who's upgrading, they don't have to go out and purchase these licenses. You could automatically get those as part of your upgrade. So if at the moment, say for example, you have 25 business portal users raising requisitions, or 25 requisition users in business portal, they'll automatically get the new licenses with the upgrade. So they'll have access to the system and raise their requisitions within GP. We're utilising the existing licensing structure, or the new upgraded licensing structure.
Excellent. Great. Thanks, Rob. Okay, workflow. Is there one for staff reimbursement or travel authority?
Staff reimbursements as in expenses. I'll have to.
Yeah.
That is a good question. That one we're going to have to come back on. I don't think there is one. I'm just trying to think of whether there was mention of one coming in future releases. So at this stage, there isn't one. No.
Okay, so what we'll do is, for the client that's asked that question, we'll pass that on to their account manager and get that one further looked into for them.
And confirm,
yeah, and he's confirming that, yes, he's talking expenses.
Yeah.
Okay, still sticking with workflow, can the workflow approval email be customized to show more information about the request instead of clicking on the hyperlink to see the details?
Yeah, so very good question. Thank you for that, whoever asked that. The email can be configured. There is actually a template in the background where you can configure what is actually included on the email. At this moment, you can't really include the transaction information, but what they are doing in the very next release, so the R2 release, which is due now in May and June, is they're allowing the ability to, in the workflow email, to include the attachment that's on the document. So at a document level, if you recall, I did mention in the presentation there, when I was raising the requisition, if I wanted to, I could include, say for example, a scanned copy of a quote from a supplier on the requisition. Well, then I could pick that up and include that in the email, in the approval email that was routed through for workflow approval. And I'm using the example there of requisitions, but obviously that's applicable to any workflow.
Great,
So,
thanks for that. Thank you, Rob. And the final one that I have here at the moment is, can you use the purchase order approval facility to approve journals prepared by other staff prior to posting?
I'm a bit confused with the question. So, sorry, read that again. So,
Yep.
it talks about purchase orders and journals.
Yep. Can you use the purchase order approval facility to approve journals prepared by other staff prior to posting?
Okay, I'll try to answer this. So there is a GL journal batch approval workflow. So yes, you could use it to approve it before they can post the batch, yes. And the same goes for purchase orders. So obviously there's a purchase order workflow approval, so there is approvals in both those areas. So I wasn't sure if the questions are around purchase orders or GL journals, but there is workflows around both those.
Okay, great. Well, what we'll do also is pass that question on to their account manager, and should we have not answered that question fully, we might get some more information from them and be able to expand on that for them.
Yeah, thanks, Kim.
Excellent. So I'll just give it another minute and see if there's any more questions at the moment. Actually, one that, Rob, that you might be able to help, and I have a feeling that you've got a slide for us on this, is obviously we've got clients on different versions of GP going back to, heaven help us, 9 or 8, but then we've got 9, 10, GP 2010. What's the upgrade process to get them up to 2015, just on a technical type of where they can come from to where they need to be to get to 2015?
Well said, Kim. We thought we would include this little slide here just in case people were wondering, because there's people out there who are on all sorts of versions. So just as an indicator of sort of the upgrade path, shall we say. So if you're coming from version 8, you can see there from version 8 we can upgrade you to 2015, but obviously there's a few versions you have to go through. Right through to, you can see there from 2010, there's an upgrade path. Look, suffice to say, don't get too put off by this slide. What we're saying here, really what we're trying to say here, is that we can upgrade you from any version, from version 8 onwards, we can upgrade you no problem. And the fact that even if we look at the worst case scenario, which is version 8 there, where we have to actually upgrade you to 10 and then to 2013, and then before we can put you to 2015. To the end user, I mean, that is not apparent. They're not aware of that. So basically, to the end user, you're going from 8 to 15. It happens in one foul swoop. It just does mean that the upgrade itself is probably going to take a little bit longer, because our tech guys in the background actually have to do sort of 2 mini upgrades before that. So if you're coming from 8, for example, they've got to upgrade the data to 10 before they upgrade it to 2013, before they upgrade it to 2015. So
that's more of something technical in the background, not something that the end user will see.
Yeah. So really, all we're trying to give people the comfort in this slide is to say, look, even if you're on version 8, it doesn't matter. You still can go from 8 straight to 2015. You don't have to upgrade to 2010 or 2010 first and sit on that for a week or anything like that. We can actually do it in the one foul swoop.
Excellent, wonderful. Thank you, Rob, for that. Now, it does seem that we've finished with our questions today, which is fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for attending. We appreciate you taking your time out to stay with us for just under an hour today. Look, what next? Contact your account manager to discuss your upgrade timing, whether that's within the next 6 months, 12 months, whatever timing suits you. We can certainly work with you to get that locked in. If you're not sure who your account manager is, then please reach out to Fraser, either via his email or on phone, and he will get you in contact with the relevant inside account manager. So look, again, the session has been recorded, so that if there's something from the session that you want to show one of your work colleagues, the link will get sent out to you within the next week or so. Look, again, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Really appreciate your time. Thank you, Rob. That was a great session on the What's New within GP 2015. And we'll wrap up now and let you all go back on with your day. Thank you again for attending.
Thanks, everyone.